Okay, I'm putting together a little tutorial for flatting, just to give you a rundown of how I do it. I know some folks already know how to do it, but this is more for the folks that have never really put flat colors down before. So I appreciate the help for anybody pitching in. So we'll get started. This is your artboard. This is where all your tools are going to be. We'll have a little list of your most important tools. They are the pencil tool, the paint bucket tool, the eyedropper, and the magic wand. You're going to use these over and over again. It's a pretty repetitive process, but you'll see as we go along what we do here. There's 3 layers that you're going to be worried about that you're going to primarily be operating in. There's only 3 to try to simplify it. When we pull up the layer window, eventually, you'll see that there is a layer that says flats go here, and that's where the flats will go. Try to keep it as straightforward as possible. So it is a little window. It'll pop up. As you can see, I make lots of these. I am going to use some stuff. There it is, the top lines. When you see your little window, flats go here and then background. And you're going to be operating on the one in the middle that says flats go here. So make sure that's selected when you get started and everything should be all right. First thing we'll do is lay down a tone for the entire thing. We'll go to our reference colors that are included in the Dropbox that I send you, the spaces, and you'll be able to pull with your the eyedropper tool, any color there, and then you'll come back and then you'll use the paint bucket tool and just click and it'll fill that whole area, as you can see. Now, there's a few different ways to simplify this, but we'll go the most direct route, which is just to use the eraser tool, and you just make sure it's set to pencil. There's a little window at the top that says brush or pencil. Make sure it says pencil, and that'll give you a nice hard edge. And then all you do is follow along the edges of the panels. And just like any sort of coloring book when you're a kid, you can erase right along the edge and it'll do what we need it to do. Excuse me. As you go along the edge, it's just like coloring as a kid. You stay outside the lines and we'll do a little speed up here to see the rest of it get done real quick. And there are ways to do this with other tools. Like I said, this is really just the most direct way to do it. And then we'll get there to the end of this one. So you can see we zoom around, zoom, zoom, zoom. Lightning speed. We're going to work on the first panel in the upper left. We'll grab our magic wand tool and we will select the entire panel there after we pick out our color, I think is what we did. We went back to the reference. We're grabbing, using the lower right, I'm grabbing other reference. I'll send everything that I got. If there's a color that you're not sure of, just guess, because I can fix it after the flats are done. So I'm looking for a page here, I think, and then it's just to grab the color for the background, which I'm spending too much time on, but here I am with the eyedropper tool fumbling around. And then I think what I decide, because this is a toned page already, is I go in and I blur it real quick so that I can grab. See, it's grabbing colors, and this might happen if you look at the issue 0 pages that I sent. So if you grab one of those instead of the other pages, you may need to blur it, which means you just go to Effect, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur, and then set it to like 20% or so. And that'll give it a blur to where you'll be able to grab an average color in any area of that image. And I'm just grabbing a background color. I'm just doing this to be kind of accurate, because when I go on to the next steps of colors, I do use mixed ink levels, like the old school coloring back in the day. So we grab our magic wand tool. Did we do that? Yeah, we did. So, okay, there we did. Yep, and then we click on the blue, and that'll give us the entire area of blue to work in, and it'll start to define the edge. We grab our pencil tool, and then as you can see, I'm just kind of drawing along the edge for the background. And what I'm doing now is really just blocking out shapes. All the main shapes I will give a solid color to in any image, and that just makes it easier going forward because I can use that magic wand to select each of those areas, and I don't have to worry about redefining those edges that we already just did. It just saves a step. So we outline something, we grab the paint bucket tool, and then we click inside what we just outlined, and it fills it. And then you grab your magic wand tool again and click the blue area, and you'll see that the selection now is just of the blue, and that thing that we just drew is not selected. And then what you do is you grab your next color off the reference. If it's, in this case, it's the skin tone on the correlator. And we just start outlining all the skin tone areas. We just move along, slow and steady, stay inside the lines. And you'll see as we move forward, there'll be times when I have to go back and grab the eraser tool, but that's not a big deal because we're working in flat colors and there's no gradients whatsoever, so it's nice and clean. And then we fill that just like we did the last one with the paint bucket tool. And now I'm going to do Colonel Feathers. And I just outlined him and filled him with the paint bucket tool. And then we'll grab another color. And then we're doing the little casino outline, fill it with a color. Now we'll do the little statuaries. And those are just, again, using an outline. And then we grab the paint bucket tool and then fill it. That's when I say, like, most of this is just with the pencil tool. And it gives you that nice hard edge so that when you go to use this magic wand tool, it selects everything. And every time I finish a different one, I go back and get the magic wand tool and click on the blue area again so that I don't have to redefine edges. You're defining these channels and these edges. And there are other ways to do this, but I think this is the most direct. And it's the most simple way that I think people that don't really know the programs can wrap their minds around. And it's a modified version of a coloring book. And we just keep grabbing different little sections with the shapes, and using the pencil tool and the fill tool, we do what we need to do. And it just takes time. It's not a super creative process. It's a very mechanical process, but as we go along, it fills in, and you'll start to see, we'll zoom in just to make sure that we are filling everything in, not going outside the lines. If you need to zoom, you can either hit Control plus and minus to zoom in and out, or you can go over in your tools there's a magnifying glass that you can use and click. So now we're filling in the correlator, doing his little skin tones. Again, just outlining with the pencil tool and using the paint bucket tool to fill it in. If you get an isolated area, sometimes you can just use the paint bucket tool, but you have to make sure if you do that and it's not isolated, it'll fill in more than just the area you're trying to color. And if you make a mistake, you can just hit undo, like Control Z if you hit on the keyboard, or if you go to Edit and then click Undo, then that'll undo the last thing you just did. And you can do it up to, I think, like 12 times in a row. So you can hit Control Z over and over again and keep going back to steps. Now we got Colonel Feathers, this little air pack. And filling his little feathers there. He's got his hands on the edge of the table, and they're talking about the big plan. And we're getting close to being done with the standard flats, and this is what it looks like. Next, I will show you where I take it from here, but this is as far as you got to take it. So save it, upload it, send it to me, and you're on to the next thing after you do all the panels on a page, of course. This is what it looks like without the line art. You can see hard lines everywhere. There's no gradients. And that's what we want. That's the end result that we're looking for. I will show you now the next step that I take. You don't have to do any of this, but it's something that I just wanted to show off as I select an area. And then I use the next tone for like the first level of shading. And you can see that I'm using a light source that's kind of up and to the left and adding shadows and stuff to give depth to the figure and the shapes that are there. And you'll see as I go along. And sometimes this is actually the end point for the coloring when this process is finished, when I'm using just hard, flat colors. But when I'm going to do like we're doing with this project, I'm going to add the retro colors on top of it, which is another 4-layer process with different screens and tones and stuff. And it just creates that nice retro feel look to the whole thing. It has just a warm, nostalgic feel to it, and it gives a certain context to the entire story and places it not only in its story in a certain time and place, but in the original into a different time and place. So, and that's pretty much it right there, what that panel will look like before I take it to the next step. And you don't have to do any of that. I just wanted to share it with you because I think it's interesting. And thank you so much for helping me out with this. If you have any questions, you can hit me up on email or whatever. And I'm really excited to get this project to the next step and get books in people's hands. So thank you very much.